Welcome to Module 9 of the Six Sigma Institute's Lean Six Sigma Certification Curriculum, which follows both the Council for Six Sigma Certification and the International Association for Six Sigma Certification's body of knowledge. A full copy of the Council for Six Sigma Certification's Book of Knowledge can be downloaded from the course description section for free. In this module, we will be discussing the selection of Six Sigma projects. This module will take approximately 40 minutes to complete. At the end of this module, there will be a 5-question quiz on the topics discussed, which you can complete on your own at any time. You will also find several Six Sigma tools that you can download, including a project prioritization matrix template and a project selection metrics template, both of which are Excel files. Even when organizations hire employees dedicated to process improvement, they can only sustain a certain number of improvement projects. In this section, we are going to discuss the importance of project workload. A critical part of Six Sigma success for organizations is knowing when teams reach maximum project load. There are no formulas that exist for how many Six Sigma projects a company should run at any given time, but a well-designed project is more likely to make a greater impact than having many poorly designed overlapping or underfunded projects. Six Sigma projects take monetary resources, which means organizations must prioritize based on financial criteria. An organization can only conduct so many projects at one time because of the costs related to their implementation. An organization will have to pay for downtime of an operation, the raw materials needed for pilot testing a solution, and many other related costs. Imagine if a process is producing a large number of defects and it is determined that the root cause is an old and outdated piece of equipment. You may find a replacement piece that is exactly the same and can be simply swapped out. But if that equipment was originally purchased 20 years ago, then you may only find used replacements to choose from, and the newer version could cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace completely. Six Sigma projects require work from employees at all levels. Companies shouldn't launch 3 projects at one time that draw heavily on IT resources or attempt multiple simultaneous projects that need input from the Director of Compliance on a regular basis. Relying too heavily on resources for multiple projects can burn out employees, decrease morale, impact quality, and of course impede work that is necessary to keep the business running from day to day. Imagine having a team of 6 people spending 20% of their day working on a project for a period of 6 weeks. In a 40-hour work week, that equates to 8 hours per week or 48 hours over the course of a 6-week project. Times 6 team members or 288 hours worth of wages that are not spent on generating income for the business. Project teams require leadership. Six Sigma teams are usually run by black belts, sometimes along with certified project managers. Since black belts are supported by green belts who handle much of the data collection and analysis work, a single black belt can usually manage more than one project at a time if needed. This is especially true for experienced black belts who are not responsible for any other type of daily operation. Even so, organizations with limited Six Sigma experts on staff can't launch dozens of projects without putting a strain on those resources. When companies are working to apply a Six Sigma culture to the entire enterprise, decision makers should work directly with Six Sigma experts in order to identify improvement opportunities and to launch projects. In this section, we will discuss the enterprise level project selection process. We will look at the project viability model and the 15 criteria needed to determine which project should be undertaken. We will also take a moment to look at the selection of projects at the process level. Organizations can apply a 5-step procedure for identifying viable Six Sigma improvement projects. These steps include data-based review of current state of an organization, the brainstorming of potential projects, the application of criteria to shorten the project list, the creation of unique business criteria, and the use of that business criteria to prioritize the list of potential projects. When companies are working to apply Six Sigma culture to the entire enterprise, executive leaders and other decision makers should work directly with Six Sigma experts to identify improvement opportunities and launch those projects. The use of these 5 steps provides a stable foundation for that project selection process. Organizations can begin with a high level look at internal and external sources of information about performance. Internal information might include complaints or issues raised by employees, existing performance metrics or reports, financial reports, and quality reports. External sources include all of the voice of the customer tools we covered previously. In making a database review, we need to ask ourselves, what type of things are customers or employees complaining about? What is the organization falling short of benchmark or competitor performance? What needs do customers have that the organization is not meeting? What needs might customers have in the future that the organization is not yet able to meet? What processes are outputting the most defects? What processes are known for the most rework? What are the slowest or most expensive processes in the organization? And what are some obstacles keeping the organization from reaching its goals? Answers to the questions in step 1 become a brainstorming list for potential projects. What type of things are customers complaining about? Perhaps surveys and feedback forms show customers complaining about long shipment times, poor quality of products, or rude customer service. Admittedly, the scope is enormous, so organizations would need to look for a bit more detail. We previously covered the 5 whys brainstorming method, and that method is relevant here. During the brainstorming process, organizations and teams should repeatedly ask why to get a more granular look at project possibilities. Creating a list of possible projects in this manner isn't always a matter of a single brainstorming session. As issues are raised, more information might be required to list possible projects. But if you gather the right group of people for a few brainstorming sessions, it is likely someone already has that information or knows some basic answers. Remember, the point of this exercise is to call out possible areas for improvement, not validate assumptions or come up with solutions. Once a list of possible projects are created, teams can apply some very basic criteria to remove projects that are inappropriate, would not work with Six Sigma methodology, or are not properly scoped or have little likely return on investment. This step usually begins during the second part of step 2, when teams are creating short descriptions of possible projects. First, teams can remove items from the list where there is no real pain point. If a significant difference between the desired state or current state doesn't exist, then there is nothing to improve. Second, teams can remove issues that have very obvious problems and or solutions. In some cases, action is required on the part of the organization, but that action wouldn't be a Six Sigma project, although it may qualify for as a lean Kaizen event. After removing project ideas that do not fit Six Sigma methodology, teams should create and apply business criteria to further filter the list. Business criteria usually come in the form of expenses, monetary gain, impact on customer satisfaction, and urgency. Teams may ask how the improvement will impact revenue facing measurements such as profit, orders, or income, or what improvement will create in cost savings. Teams should ask whether the issue is becoming a bigger and more urgent issue quickly, or Can the organization operate with minimal impact without making an immediate or near future change? How much the improvement will cost an organization is an important criterion, as well as the amount of resources or employees that will be required for the improvement from start to finish. Using the business criteria, teams should prioritize projects and select projects from the top of the prioritized list for immediate work. One of the best ways to prioritize projects is to create a selection matrix with defined criteria and a numerical ranking system. A matrix can be created using the criteria and a list of projects. Teams can then rate each project against each criteria using a numeric scale. You can apply a scale from 1 to 10, with 1 being the most negative and 10 being the most positive, in order to rate each possible project. It's important to note that the numbers are not always associated with real world numbers. For example, when rating savings, a higher number just means a more positive expectation. In this case, the positive expectation would be a high amount of savings when rating costs. However, the higher number and more positive expectation would relate to a project with a lower overall cost. Teams can choose to create their own criteria for a project selection matrix, or they can use the 15-point viability model that we will describe next. One benefit of the project viability model is that it provides some weighting, letting teams make some criteria more important than others. It also removes some of the objective nature of the selection matrix defined previously. The 15 criteria used in the viability model include whether the project is likely to be sponsored at a high level, whether the goals of the project are aligned with the business, whether the data is available or can be accessed, whether there is a specific, well defined defect or problem, whether the potential process is stable, whether the planned goal of the project would create a substantial and positive impact on customer satisfaction or perception of quality, whether the project has a strong cost benefit ratio, whether the timeline for the project is short, whether the project's purpose is to find a solution that is not already known or defined, whether a solution identified and verified by the project is likely to be implemented, whether the project requires a large investment of cash, and whether there are green and black belts available for the project. We also want to look and know whether some of the inputs are within the control of the team or organization, whether the process can be improved as is, and of course, whether the improvement doesn't negatively impact the quality of service of products along the value chain. To create a project viability model, we start by creating a 17 by 7 matrix. The headers will be on the first row, leaving 15 rows, one for each of the criteria, then a final row for calculating the score totals. In the first column, we will identify these 15 criteria, and in the second column, we will give each criteria a specific weight, depending on what is most important to the organization. The remaining columns will be used to score a single possible project against the 15 criteria, using a Likert scale from 1 to 5, with 1 representing the farthest left column and 5 represented by the farthest right column. We score each of the 15 criteria. There should be only 1 score marked per row. Next, we divide each of the weights we assign to the individual 15 criteria by 3 and convert each criteria score by multiplying the 1 to 5 values of the score by the weight and replacing the mark in the cell. We then need to sum up or add up all of the converted scores in each of the 5 columns individually, plus the sum of all the weights. We will now multiply each of the column sums by the sum of the weight column and replace the sum of the column scores with this new number before adding all 5 of these new numbers together and dividing them by 3. If that final number is less than 2, then it is not a viable Six Sigma project. but may be handled by the company through other means. If that final number is between 2 and 3, then it may be a viable project, but we need to further validate it later. If that final number is greater than 3, then it is a viable Six Sigma project. The higher the score, the better it is for project implementation. A department or team responsible for only a few processes might be seeking to make an improvement. In an organization where Six Sigma is an important to the business culture, departmental leaders are likely familiar with some Six Sigma tools and might even be green belts or black belts themselves. While these leaders have daily responsibilities that are not Six Sigma related, they can bring a Six Sigma thought process to their department. Departmental leaders might want to identify potential opportunities to present to leadership. They might also want to identify areas where they and other teams can work towards improvement themselves. In some organizations, department leaders can run smaller versions of projects with the guidance of on staff Six Sigma experts, especially when such projects would require little in the way of capital or resources. Often, departmental staff are close enough to the situation that they can identify possibilities for improvement without going through the brainstorming stage.